Introduction. Just a quick introduction about Derek. Derek Campbell became an IPCC Commissioner in January 2013. He has the responsibility not just for West Midlands, but apparently for Leicestershire, Staffordshire, Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire, South Yorkshire, and West Yorkshire forces. Like all operational commissioners, Derek is responsible for providing independent oversight of and taking ultimate responsibility for IPC, the investigations, casework, and the promotion of public confidence in the complaint system. Derek was previously Chief Executive of the Rights and Equality Council, and before that, the CEO of Saddle Chamber of Commerce. I mean, there's more I can say, Derek, but I'll pass it over to yourself now, Derek.
Blessings. Namaste to all my friends and family. Thank you very much for giving up your time to Bipal, to Hamir and Jazz, and for inviting me to join with you on this special in this time when we could all be doing other things, and to give up your time this time of night. I really appreciate it. I'm joined today with my executive support manager, Amanda Hill, who's keeping me on track. And I'm really pleased that I've been able to share with you. I was at the Hindu temple last week. I was with the Yemeni community this morning. I'm going around the area, and part of my job is to meet people, talk about the work that we do, take questions, and indeed deal with issues that fall within my remit. So how I plan to deal with this evening, I've got a 7 to 10 minute presentation, and I'm more than happy to send a copy to Vipal or Hamir, whoever it is. So don't panic if you don't take all the information down. I'm happy to send you the PowerPoint that I'll go through, and then I'm going to just take questions. So what I'm really hoping that you all feel brave, and you'll start asking me lots and lots of questions, because that's where we'll learn the most. We'll get to know a little bit about each other. You can put the questions in the comment bars, or we can take the questions in live play a little bit later. A little bit about myself, to adding on to what V was saying. So my name's Derek Campbell. The information he had is slightly out of date. I've got even more pressure than I had. I wish it wasn't back in those days. So I used to be the Independent Police Complaints Commissioner when we had the IPCC, the Independent Police Complaints Commission. That was removed or dissolved from the statute books on the 7th of January 2018, and replaced 1 minute past midnight on the 8th of January by the Independent Office for Police Conduct, the IOPC. So that is who we are now. And I'll talk a little bit about what we do in my presentation. So that's just a little bit of a bit of context to what I'm talking to you about. In simple language, we are the police watchdog. We are not the police. We've never been the police. As a matter of fact, by law, I can never, ever have worked for the police service. I am banned. So I have never worked for the police. I am not the police. We're the organization that has independent powers to allow us to hold the police to investigation and to examine them. And we are the people that have the power to investigate the police. So just be really clear, we are not the police, we're independent, and we have the powers to investigate them. So a simple example is, I can arrest the police. I can lock them up in prison. I can charge them with murder. I can bog their house like James Bond. I can do covert surveillance. We have huge powers. So we are the police, if that makes any sense. So that's who we are, very simply. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to go through my PowerPoint, and then we are going to take some questions after I've gone through the PowerPoint. Only 10 minutes, and I don't intend to be too long because I really want to talk to you and just give a few examples of what we do, how we do it, and how we work. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about a complaint. One of the most important things is that if you are unhappy with the way you've been treated, what do you do? By the police, what do you do? If you think your contact with them, you're not happy with that, what do you do? So this presentation is going to help you understand very simply what we do and what you can do. So we talk about, I'm unhappy with the police, I can make a complaint. And I'm going to go through that with you. So if my screen decides to work. Right, so who are we? The former IPCC, as I've mentioned before. We are led by an individual called the Director General, a guy called Michael Lockwood. We oversee the police complaint system. So it's not our system, it's the police's complaint system. But our job is to make sure that they operate it properly. So you go to the police, you complain. How do you know they're going to deal with your complaint properly? We are the guardians of the complaint system. So we have the power to make them do and investigate and to deal with your complaints properly. That's what we have, legal powers set down in law. So we're called the guardians of the complaint system. We investigate the most serious incidents and complaints involving the police, and we deal with appeals. So as well as investigating a complaint, if the police investigate the complaint themselves and you are unhappy with how they've handled it, you can then make an appeal to us or the Police and Crime Commissioner. So that is what we mean by complaint. So to give you an example of that, we only deal with England and Wales. Scotland have got their own police oversight body. Northern Ireland has got their own oversight body. So we only deal with England and Wales. There's roughly 110, 120,000 police officers or officers in England and Wales that we oversee. There are 43 Home Office police forces, and there are other agencies that we also oversee. So we also oversee British Transport Police, the Border Agency, the airports, a number of shipping ports, and the Nuclear Constabulary, part of the MOD, the Gangmasters and Licensing Abuse Authority, the National Crime Agency. So you can see we have a huge remit to oversee complaints against these bodies. We learn from our complaints and we share that learning to change and improve policing, as well as holding individuals accountable where they've got things wrong and they need to be held accountable. All our decisions are made independent of the police, so we're not influenced by them. They have no power over us. They can be upset if they want. We don't care. We will investigate them without fear, without favor. We don't really care if they don't like it. We have the powers to go in there and look at anything we want. And they hate it, but that's life. That's what we're here to do, because we are here to build public confidence. I've mentioned that we obviously these forces, but we are also part of a group of bodies that also oversee the police. So we work with Her Majesty Inspector of the Constabulary. We work with the College of Policing. We work with the National Police Chiefs Council. We work with Police and Crime Commissioners. And we all work to oversee the behavior of the police to make sure that they respect the powers that we have given them and that they do the job that they're set up to do. So again, I've given you a list of some of the people that we work. We also have oversight of police and crime commissioners. So all the police and crime commissioners, we also have oversight of their behavior. So not only just chief constables and the police officers, but we also oversee police and crime commissioners. So you can see we have a very, very powerful role of holding the police accountable. A little bit about history. We saw that there's racism identified in the Macpherson inquiry following the death of Stephen Lawrence, where the Metropolitan Police were classed as institutionally racist. That meant they had to change the way they treated people of colour and minority groups because we were not treated properly. And in some cases, we're still not treated properly across those countries by the police. So we were set up as an independent body to make sure that they do their job and that people are treated fairly. As I said, I'll give you this PowerPoint so you haven't got to worry about all the dates, etc. Now, my region, so you can see England and Wales, there's Wales in the red. That's Wales in the red. Now, my region is this green region. It used to be, as Vijay says earlier, it used to be a smaller region, but now it's a ridiculous region. So you can see I cover Lincolnshire, Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire, Leicestershire, Northamptonshire, Warwickshire, West Mercia, Gloucestershire, Wiltshire, West Midlands, Staffordshire, Derbyshire. You can see I cover the whole of Middle England. So I've got a massive remit. The West Midlands is only a small part. So again, you can see we have a huge footprint. And there are 6 of me. There's a director for Wales, Catherine. There's a director in the yellow bit, Graham. There's the Sal Nassim is a regional director for London. You've got Miranda Biddle. You've got Amanda Rowe. So all of us are directors and we have our own different regions and we do the same job in each area. So you can see we want you to understand a simple understanding of what a complaint is and how it works within the law and what our role in helping you or others manage and get through the complaint system. So what do we mean by a complaint? A complaint is any expression of dissatisfaction. Anything that you're unhappy about is in effect a complaint. Once you come in contact with the police or you witness the treatment of a member of a family member or someone else, if you witness treatment or behavior that you think is not right, you're entitled to make a complaint about it. And this definition is actually now contained within the Police Reform Act. We call that the PRA. That's the body of law that makes us who we are and gives us powers to be effective in policing, in holding the police accountable. There must also be some intention from the complainant. So if you're the person making the complaint, you must genuinely want to raise a concern and you want the police to be aware that you're unhappy with the way they have behaved or a police officer has behaved. So a complaint doesn't have to be made in writing. You don't have to write a letter, nor must it be explicitly state that it's a complaint. You don't have to say this is a complaint. You just have to say, I'm not happy with what's happened and I want you to deal with it. That's all you need to do. So we're going to explain how that happens and make you be aware of that. So the Police Reform Act 2002 is the body of law that gives me power. And under this PRA, I'll call it that, the Police Reform Act, we, the IOPC, Independent Office for Police Conduct, we have a statutory duty to refer any complaint. The police have a statutory duty to raise a complaint with us if they're mandatory. And once we have been made aware of it, we have a statutory duty to tell the police, we've received a complaint and we're telling you that we've received a complaint. The police then, the person in the police, they're called the appropriate authority. That's the person in the police force who we talk to. Within what they class as the professional standards. The professional standards can sometimes be called the internal affairs. This is the body within the police that investigates complaints against their officers. It's called the professional standards. And we tell them about it, and they then have to assess that complaint, and it goes into the process. If the complaint is against the chief constable, then that is dealt with by the policing crime commissioner or indeed the relevant policing body. So he's treated or she's treated slightly different. But the long story short, the complaint is recorded by the police service and then it starts its journey through the various stages. So what are the types of complaints that you can make or a person can make? You can complain about rudeness. I think this officer was very rude. They didn't treat me with courtesy and respect, incivility. You can complain because you believe you've made a complaint or you called the police to help and they didn't investigate your complaint properly. You can complain if you believe that you've been treated unfairly, biased compared to somebody else, or if you've been discriminated against, or again, if you think they've used excessive force. So these are some of the examples these are things that you can complain about if you experience any of this following police contact. Who can complain? A person who the conduct relates to. So I've received the poor treatment, so I can complain. Someone adversely affected, so I am being treated badly, but my wife or my children are upset because they are affected by that. They can complain, or my neighbor or anybody else. Somebody who witnesses the way I'm being treated, a passerby are unhappy with the way that I'm being treated, they can complain, or a representative from any of the above. So you can see anyone can complain if they've been affected by the incident. Who cannot complain? A police officer cannot complain to us. So if a police officer has a problem, they cannot complain to us. The law forbids a police officer from complaining to us. They have to go through a completely different process, but a police officer cannot complain to us. Only in exceptional circumstances, which I'll talk about later. Also, those making a complaint about something witnessed on television. So if you're watching the TV and you see something on the news, you cannot complain because the law doesn't permit you you're not justified to complain if you see it on social media or on TV. You've got to be there, present, to experience or witness it. So those are two exceptions. How do we receive complaints? Well, we get complaints in various ways. Sometimes individuals are unhappy with what's happened to them, so they call us up. Our number's on the website, or they get on the email, make a complaint against the police, and they simply type in what force. I'm in West Midlands, this happened to me and I'm not happy about it. So they can put it on the online. They can send us a letter through the post, or they can just send us an email. All of those are valid ways, and once we get them, we will deal with them as a complaint. It's as simple as that. If you ring us up, our customer contact center will take the complaint over the phone, except where there are vulnerable people. We'll need to do different things to protect vulnerable people, so we'll deal with that slightly different. In all other cases, we will just directly call us. So if you call us up, I want to make a complaint, we'll either take the complaint and say we'll make it on your behalf, or we will say, okay, we understand what has happened. Here is a number for the police, ring them and tell them about it. If you're scared, anxious, worried about talking to the police, we will take the complaint and we will make it for you. Online, again, there's a complaint form online. You simply go in IOPC, make a complaint against the police, and it just simply fill in the things, and we will then get that and we will pass that complaint on. And in essence, that is my presentation. Told you it was a short one. It's not meant to be complicated. It's meant to be really simple. I'm now going to stop sharing my screen. And any questions before I go on to the next bit of this presentation? Are there any questions on the presentation so far, or any questions that you may have? Don't be shy.
I was going to say, shall we hold the questions till the end, if that's okay with everybody?
That's absolutely fine. Brilliant. Great.
Yeah,
so store your questions
we can bombard you straight away afterwards.
Absolutely fine. So I'm going to just give a little bit. So that's how to make a complaint. Let me talk about how the complaint system works in practice. So a complaint is made. So Derek Campbell, driving down the road, the police officer stops me, swears at me and walks off. I'm unhappy with that. I go to the police station, I go to the desk and I say, I was just driving down the road, your officer blogs, swore at me, I want it investigated. Now, there's only 3 reasons why they do not have to record a complaint. When I say record the complaint, it's really important that we understand what that means. Recording the complaint means that they are making a note of the complaint and they're registering it on the system that a complaint has been made. If it is not recorded, it doesn't exist. So if you walk out of the police station or you hang up the phone and they have not acknowledged that your complaint is valid, the complaint doesn't exist. What does that mean? It means nothing will happen, and the police then do not have to follow a legal process. So sometimes the forces, because they know it's a difficult complaint to deal with, they'll try not to record it, because they know if they record it, they then have to legally follow a process, which then exposes any wrongdoing, any failures, and it forces them to take a course of action. But there's only 3 reasons why they can legitimately refuse to record a complaint. 1, it's repetitious. In other words, you've already told us about it, we've already recorded it, we do not need to record it again. They can refuse to record it because it's already recorded. Repetitious. 2, it's vexatious and malicious. There's no complaint. You're just trying to get back at a particular police officer and you're just making it up. That will be tested to make sure that they're not just trying to fob you off. 3, it's far-fetched and fanciful. Simply means it is so ridiculous, we're not recording it. So you go into the police station and you say, I believe the chief constable is an alien from Mars. Every police officer is a dinosaur and they're trying to get me. Clearly, they're not going to record that. So unless it's one of the 3, they have to record it. If they don't record the complaint, you can then appeal to us to say, I am appealing a non-recording event. I tried to register my complaint and they wouldn't record it. We will then contact the force to say, Mr. Campbell came in to report something. Why did you not record it? If it's not one of those 3, or we're not satisfied, we have the power to force them to record it. We will say, I am now telling you to record it, and they have no choice. In law, they have no choice. Failure to comply with my instructions is a breach of the law. They cannot refuse, and they will give you an acknowledgement that they have recorded the complaint, just to make that clear. So once they then have to be given time to investigate. So you can't go back the week after and say, what's happened? There is absolutely nothing you can do because it will take as long as it takes. Now, this is where a lot of people get frustrated because sometimes it takes a year, sometimes even 2 years. Now, if you believe that they're taking an unnecessary amount of time, you can make a complaint about the process of investigation, and we will contact them, or they will have to tell you why it's taken so long. And it has to be a meaningful update. They can't just say, well, it's taken as long as it takes. No, it has to be a meaningful reason. And I'll give you an example of that in a second. Once your complaint has been registered, you are then classed in law as an interested person, and you gain the status of IP, interested person. Why is that important? It's important because that then opens up a legal process with you as the complainant. You then have to be given meaningful updates on the progress of your investigation. 2, they have to take into account the impact that the problem has had on you as a person, and your feelings, your views have to shape the investigation because you're the IP, the interested party. Every 28 days as a minimum, they have to give you an update on the progress of your investigation. And it has to be a meaningful update. They can't just say, we're continuing investigations. No, they have to say, we've interviewed X amount of witnesses. We've made a referral to the CPS. You know, we are trying to track down, you know, they've got to tell you something meaningful so you can see the progress of your investigation. And that is afforded to you as an IP, an interested person. So now you see the importance of making sure it's recorded. After they've done their investigation, they then are required to notify you on the outcome of that investigation. So they will write to you to tell you what their findings are. They also have to give you the right to appeal. Depending on the type of investigation. Now, let me put this in context so you understand what I'm talking about, because this won't make sense without understanding this. There's 110, 120,000 officers that we oversee in all of those forces. Each year, they generate about 34,000 on average complaints against them every year. Just to give you a context of what I'm talking about. So England and Wales, all the police officers, border agency, NCA, all those people, they generate about, on average, about 34,000 complaints made against them each year. Out of the 34,000, the IOPC, we only do the most serious and sensitive investigations. So we will do, on average, we will only look at about 500 a year. So you can see the vast majority of investigations are done by the police. We only do a very small percentage, and the ones that we do are the ones that will have the biggest impact on public confidence: deaths in police custody, serious corruption, road traffic incidences, those kind of things, police shootings. So we will look at those things because they will have the greatest impact on public confidence. The rest, the police deal with it. So at the end of an investigation, you'll get an outcome. Once you've got your outcome notification, if you are unhappy, and this is really important, if you are unhappy with how you've been treated during the investigation, they took too long, you don't think they investigated things properly, you think they didn't treat you correctly, you can then appeal. And depending on the investigation, you can either appeal to the Police and Crime Commissioner, who is the appellate body, or you can appeal to us, me, the IOPC, who is also another appellate body. So we can deal with appeals. To put a context on that, we get referred, so the police will send to us, so they've got 34,000 complaints roughly, sometimes it's more. They will send to us each year about 4,600 of those for us to look at. We will look at those 4,600 and we will send most of them back and only deal with the 500, which I mentioned earlier. Those are complaints for investigations. As the appeal body, they refer to us about 6,400 a year. And we uphold, on average, about 41% of those appeals. So somebody appeals to us, I'm unhappy with the way my complaint was investigated. We will uphold and say, yes, we agree with you. They didn't do it properly. If we identify a problem with the police, with an appeal, we uphold the complaint and say, we agree with the person making the complaint. We will look at what the problem is. We'll send it back to the force and say, you didn't investigate this properly. Do it again. If they still fail to do it, I might say to them, I'm giving you one more chance, do it again, else I'll take action against you. If they still fail to do it properly, I'll take action against them, but I may then decide to investigate it myself because the police are incapable of doing it properly. So these are the powers and examples of how we ensure that the public are treated properly during a complaint. Now that's a lot of information. I'm going to pause there, stop my rambling, give myself a rest from talking, and I'm now going to be happy to take some questions. Hopefully that made sense. Please feel free. I'm yours.
Okay, so let's open up the platform to everybody so they can start asking questions one at a time. So if you've got their hand up, can you put their hand up or just wait till somebody finishes the question and it's been answered? Darren's on the ball straight away. Go on.
Let me start. Derek, good to see you.
See you again, Tarang.
Yeah, excellent presentation as always. And Amanda, good to see you as well, face to face for the first time. Excellent presentation, quite in depth. My question is, let me start back. I'm a supporter of the police because I think that police, without them, we're in dire trouble with all the things that are out there. And you know, lately we've had incidents on TV that the police have done this, and they've been, you know, using their position to cost women and that kind of stuff. And you know, that's human nature. People will always use their position to empower other people. But the problem that I have is that, and this is something that it probably takes just a general sort of question, is that how can we ensure that the people that we recruit have been carefully selected, that they don't have these tendencies, because we need to sort of get the public confidence back into the police. And I feel that that I think that's waning. And if we go down that route, which the Americans have, for example, in New York, they want to defund the police, and you know, they got dire problems there. And the people who are advocating defunding the police, now they're saying, why can't the police do their job? This is what they've been paid to, you know. So you can't win. The police can't win. They're in this sort of situation where no matter what they do, you know, they're in a sort of losing pattern.
Sure.
So two things really. What is it that the police need to do so that we can get the public confidence back? And I've been in a situation where I've sort of the police have confronted the people who are drug dealers, and there was about 3 or 4 cars, and these drug dealers were in the face of the police, calling them all sorts of names, and the police were unable to do anything. And they accused him of driving these silly little cars, you know, in his words, and they just had to stand there and take it. Now, if it was me, if I had a truncheon, I would start using it, and that's just, you know, that's just me, the way any human being would do. So they're constrained.
Sure. So the first thing is there's a huge hue and cry, outcry at the Sarah Everard tragic case where a police officer abused his position to perpetrate that horrific crime against Sarah. And it's brought to the forefront something that we've been calling for a long time about police vetting. And what we have been working with, so we work with the College of Policing, who are the ones that set the policy for police forces. We work with Her Majesty Inspectorates and the Constabulary, Fire and Rescue Service, HMIC, FRS. They are the ones, as you've just seen a damning report they've done on Gloucestershire, they can close down a police force, they can, because that's how powerful they are. They work for the Queen. So we work, I was with them this week, we had a meeting this week with the HMIC inspector. And what we do, we are now looking at a robust vetting regime and making sure that all the police forces adhere to that. So whereas they would have a set program, you've got to look like this tall, this muscle, whatever it is, we're now saying there's got to be an in-depth look into their background, going all the way back to school days. We've got to make sure that there are proper monitoring systems in place, so where someone is concerned about the behavior of an officer, because people still slip through the net. You know, we've got people, they will always they will always work, you know, pedophiles will always try to get into the teaching profession, all these, where there are vulnerable targets, these perpetrators will somehow work their way in. So what is now evident and is actually happening as we speak is that the system of vetting police officers has now got a triple lock on it. Not only are they just looking at how clever you are with your A-levels, GCSEs, degree, whatever it is, but they're also looking at the references. They're looking into your prison record. So it's far more intrusive. That's the first end. The other thing they're doing is they're making, that's the first lock. The second of the triple lock is that they are making sure that each officer is now effectively, in my words, not theirs, but this is the reality of it, is effectively a informant on their colleague. If I see something that my colleague is not doing, I am required to report that. And there's a legal duty now being placed on officers to do that. And the third lock is the complaint whistleblowing process is now being beefed up. So if I'm nervous about, because obviously a relationship's here, but they've now put in place and they're putting in place a more effective way where concerns can be raised about colleagues, about officers. one thing I must stress, Tarang, is that what a lot of people don't realize, that a lot of the complaints we get against police officers are actually made by other police officers. It's not made by members of the public. Colleagues are not prepared to see bad behavior. And we get a lot of complaints by serving officers complaining against police officers. That's a triple lock. And hopefully over time, the culture is going to change where bad behavior is not acceptable. Police officers are empowered to raise concerns, and indeed the system of holding these officers accountable for failure will be more robust, and these people will be dealt with speedily, taken off the front line, putting out the service. There's one thing that's really worried us, and we're asking for your support as community members. The College of Policing, and you need to make a note of this, it's really important. When a police officer has been sacked from the police force for gross misconduct, they went onto the College of Policing's barring list. In other words, they were barred from ever joining the police service. Only 2 weeks ago, the government are looking to pass and are now discussing, the Home Secretary is now discussing to make sure that that's only effective for 5 years. But what's the point of that? And we need to be saying, no. If they're barred because of gross misconduct, they don't work for the police service again. They now say it might be affected by human rights and these people can take us to court. Well, let them take us to court. But we believe they should be barred for life from ever rejoining the police service. You need to be aware of that. You need to be talking to your MPs. We believe that's wrong. And that's how we bring confidence to answer your question.
Thank you, Derek. It was quite a detailed answer once again. It's very informative. Thank you, Derek.
Good, thank you. Balbia, I can see your hand.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Good
evening, Derek. Yeah, Derek, I just wanted a couple of things. Some you have already covered. Let's just talk about this barring register. We really need to stick by what you said, in the sense that, you know, after 5-10 years, 5 years or 10 years, whatever they decide on, that it can be waived, because that is sort of bullying people into accepting, because we're not recruiting so many police officers. That's one way of boosting up that recruitment. So that is something that really needs to be reinforced. Once they're picked up, they cannot join that establishment of trust and power. That's what it is.
Yep.
Can I just take you back to your second presentation, where you said that you can appeal against the outcome, or is it appeal against investigation?
Right. Now, let me be really clear. This is where a lot of people get a bit confused, Dalby, because I'm really glad you've asked the absolute perfect question. Excellent, well spotted. At the end of an investigation, what most people don't understand, you cannot make an appeal is not valid just because you don't like the outcome. You can only, so if they say that you're guilty or you're innocent, you cannot appeal that. So if you said, well, I wanted them to find in my favor, so I'm appealing it, it's not an appeal. You can only appeal if you believe the process was not acceptable, it was wrong, and because the process was wrong, it resulted in the wrong decision, wrong outcome. And people do, and it's really important that we understand that. So you can't just, well, I'm unhappy because I didn't get what I wanted. Well, that's unfortunate. That's the way justice rolls. So you can appeal if you believe the process wasn't followed properly or they didn't do it properly, or you cannot appeal just because you don't like the outcome.
Thanks for that clarification. And what you've already covered is now we need to start building up that trust in this establishment, in particular for females. We're coming into dark night, and I know that way back in the 80s, I forgot to switch my lights on the car. Yeah. So they obviously followed me. It was blinded, and I wouldn't sit in their car. Now, it's normal standard procedure, you know, sit in the vehicle, we just need to talk to you. And I'm wondering, if that's still the process now?
It's never been standard. Sorry, Barbara, let me put in. Can I just clarify? It is not a requirement for a citizen of this country who is undergoing a traffic stop to leave their vehicle. If you are being stopped under 137 of the Traffic Road Act by a police officer, you are not required by law to leave your vehicle. Many people, the vast majority don't know that. If I'm being stopped because I haven't got my lights on, that's a traffic stop. If I'm being chased, I've robbed a bank and I've jumped in my car and I'm being chased, that is not a traffic stop. But if they're stopping you for a potential traffic offense, you are not required to, you can talk to them, but you do not have to leave your vehicle. If they try to force you, they are committing a crime.
Okay, that's good to know. And I'm glad, I hope that everybody takes this back to the rest of the community, especially the females, because in the 80s, they said, could you get into our vehicle? I said, I'm quite happy sitting in my vehicle and you speak to me. And they said, do you know who we are? I said, yeah, you're police officers. So that was the only reason I didn't get into their vehicle, because I was adamant not to. But I can imagine somebody else saying, well, yeah, it's an officer of the law and I will oblige. Otherwise they could arrest me. So that is important to know. And it's only today I've learned that. So thank you for that.
You're most welcome. And that's one of our jobs, to get the message out. What the first thing that if you're stopped in your vehicle by a police officer, the first question you should ask is, why are you stopping me? Under what act are you stopping me? If they say it's a road traffic, if it's under the Road Traffic Act, you don't have to get out your vehicle. If they then say, we insist that you get out the vehicle, your next question is, am I being arrested? And if so, what am I being arrested for? And if they can't give you that, you're entitled. And if they say you're not being arrested, you're entitled to drive off because you're not being arrested. It's a free country. Now, obviously, it's easy to say when we're in this country, but many people confronted by the police think, oh, you know, I'm facing authority. But I'm explaining that's the law. And they have to comply by the law as well. So again, part of my role, and I'm more than happy to come and talk to whoever you want to help people understand what their rights are, because it's not about being rude, but it's about making sure that the police do what they should do and don't overstep the mark.
And I think it's important to remember is to keep calm.
Always.
And parties not to get aggressive or to shout, keep that tone down, and just be polite and courteous at all times. Because
as was said by Taran, our job is never ever to undermine and destroy the police. If we don't have, we've got one of the best police service in the world. I didn't say perfect, but I've traveled a lot of countries, and if you go to Jamaica, you don't want to get involved with the police over there because they are bad. So when you see the British police, our job is to make sure that they maintain the high standards, and they need us to help them. And if the police officer asks us to do something, as a good citizen, I want the police to be effective. I want to be safe, so I'm going to work with them. And that's how I approach it.
Absolutely. It's the police, same rules in India as well. You don't want to cross a path with an Indian officer. So
say no more.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any more questions?
I think Balbir also asked on the chat when you were talking, Derek, about when you were making a complaint. I think Balbir asked, should the officer recording the complaint give you a reference or an incident number before you leave?
Yes, you must have a record or evidence that you're, because it's not word of mouth. They have to give you a recce sheet or some kind of receipt to say who the officer that recorded it was. So you have an audit trail. So the answer is yes. And they must give you some evidence that the complaint has been recorded.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Eric, I've got a couple of questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Touching upon some of the things that you've just mentioned. So the first one is about the vetting service. What has gone wrong with that? Why has that vetting service failed from what it originally was? Okay, and then the second question is about the appeal process. Can you give us some sort of examples of what kind of evidence you would need to gather in order for you to raise your objection out to to the outcome of that appeal?
Okay, brilliant. Good questions. So the first bit is in regard to the vetting. The vetting was never that robust. Many people probably thought it was, but we've got police officers now that we've discovered who are in prison, who are sex offenders. And because the vetting system didn't look at that aspect of their life, so that's what's changed now, that they're not just saying, Derek Campbell looks like a nice guy who went to a nice grammar school. They're now looking into my past, going all the way back to my school days, and they're looking at the records to see everything about me. So it's not just a deep DBS dive, it's a deep DBS. So everything that they need to know, they're now making it far more robust. So that was never there before, and that's what's changed. In regards to your second point about what evidence, if, for example, so an example is, we get a complainant who says, I've just had the outcome letter from the police. Like I'll talk about a real case, just dealing with it now. This lady contacted me. Her brother was assaulted by the police, not in this area. It was up in Leeds, actually. And 3 days after him being assaulted, he had his legs broken, he died. She raised a complaint and says, there's an obvious link, he's died following police contact. The police investigated it, but then failed to talk to witnesses who saw the police interaction. When they concluded the investigation, she said, I want a copy of the report. And she saw that there was no evidence of where they'd investigate and spoke to witnesses. Clearly, so when she brought it to us, she said, here's my grounds for appeal. They didn't do a proper investigation. They didn't interview after people. I gave them names. I told them who the problem was, and they just ignored me. Bam. We would then look at that, go back to the force and say, did you interview these witnesses? No. Why didn't you do it again? So there's a simple example of evidence that would make us understand that. If it is that we get a complaint from a person to say, I'm appealing this outcome, we have asked them, what are the grounds of your appeal? You can't just say, well, I'm appealing, and we say, well, what is it you're not happy about? You've got to tell us what you're not happy about, and that then helps us look at the specific issue. We can then identify whether there is a genuine issue. So if the person says, well, they didn't talk, they didn't interview me, and I was a key witness, we go back to the force, we look at the investigation report, and if we see a statement from the person, then obviously the person's lying because they did interview you. Do you see what I mean? So we have to look at the empirical evidence that was gathered during the investigation, or indeed that wasn't, and that's what helps informs our decision making.
Thanks, Derek, for that. I just want to touch up again on the vetting part of it again. So now that we know that the vetting wasn't at the level it should have been, and it's been revisited, is it now on par with the vetting that is carried out for people who want to join the Ministry of Defence or any other government department, where there is a very deep dive into the full history of that person?
Absolutely, 100%. And so clearly, and you touched on the point, I think Balby touched on the point earlier, I think it was about, we're trying to bolster, I'm not sure if it's Balby, I may have gone to misquote you, or Tarang, I think, about, the numbers may be low, we want to bolster the numbers. I think it was Balby. No, the criteria now is completely different. One of the things we've been lobbying for, and we now see improvements, is that there's got to be a better representation throughout the force of the communities that you're operating in. So we want to see not just people of colour, sweeping the floor and manning the desks. We want to see them as decision makers, assistant, in the senior management level, and that's what we are now starting to see percolate through. And we've also said that even the way that you promote, none of this golf course course buddies, and I like to look at cutting your jib, and when you sit before me, nod, wink, wink. No. What we're now seeing happen now is that a lot of the panels now for selection are now reaching out to members of the community to actually be part of those promotion panels. So we're now pushing more, and we've been doing this very, very clearly, because we want the police to be confident, make decisions. We want the police. What we don't want is the police to be frightened to do their job. That is no good for anybody. But what we want the police to do is to know that what they're doing, they've got the support and they're doing the right thing. They can then operate freely, make the tough decisions, but at least they've got the support from communities because we can see what they're doing. We get what they're doing. We might not like some of the things they're doing, but we understand the reason for doing it. And that partnership is what we're trying to build because it's important that the police maintain that trust and indeed improve on it as we go along.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for that, Derek.
You're welcome.
We've got one question from Harshna, who's just left, but she said, are misconduct hearings held in public? And are members of public allowed to give evidence at these hearings?
Right. Yes and no. All misconduct hearings are to be held in public. That law changed 2019.
Where do the people get the details from of these hearings?
So these hearings should be published on the police website or indeed in the media. Just like it is in court, it's put up in the court that the trial and who's going to be on trial, it's a public hearing. So they can't do it in secret. They've got, and they are required to make people know about these hearings. That's the first thing. There is a caveat to that. Some hearings cannot be heard in public because there may be some very, very sensitive stuff that could have significant consequences if it leaks out into the public. So if it's a sex offence hearing and the name of the victim might be disclosed, that will never be held in public because it's illegal to identify the victim of a sex offence. Where there's a minor involved, it's illegal to name a minor without the permission of a judge. So if there's any hearings that could lead to the identification of a minor or a victim of sexual assault, those hearings will not be, you're not allowed into those hearings. And equally, if there's national security at risk, some covert operation that may leak out, whatever. So those are the exceptions to the hearing. But yes, they should all be held in public, and yes, the police have a duty to publicise those hearings.
Cool.
And there's a limited number because obviously they have a set amount of seats, so people will need to probably apply depending on how many spaces, because they're not all order like a theatre. They may just all order a room in the court, and if there's only six seats, you know, only 6 people can get in, but it's open to the public.
Are the misconduct hearings held in the court then, or are they in the police stations or at different venues?
Different venues depending on the type. So when we did the hearing into the death of Kingsley Burrell, we went to, they hired the council house in Stoke-on-Trent, Stratford-upon-Avon, because the police station didn't have any room big enough, because they knew a lot of people would come. So they rented an auditorium and they had the hearing there. So depending on the case, depending on the public outcry, depending on it just depends on a number of different factors. But the principle is the public or members of the public can attend most of the hearings.
Okay, and one from me is, what's the threshold of making a complaint? Some things happened 6 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, or 1 year ago, 3 months ago. What's the threshold?
There is no threshold. The only thing you need to go, so we're investigating crimes that took place in the 70s.
So if something happened in the 70s, they can make a complaint today and it's all be...
Of course they can.
Okay, that's good to know. Any other questions? H, did you want to ask? Or was he just off the mic?
No, nothing else from me. Anybody else?
Yeah, can I just ask a question, Derek? Because I was just on another meeting as well.
Okay.
I don't know if it must have been said, but this recent issue on an officer stamping on a turban.
Oh, the Sikh guy, yeah.
I'm led to believe.
That's the call of the police. Did you see the police call me earlier?
Yeah.
Right.
That's what they're calling me to tell me the details of. So I can't answer much yet, but it's been referred, I think it's been referred to us now. I think that's what she was saying, but she's now calling me straight after this to tell me what's going on, because I don't know a lot about it, but I do know there's a protest yesterday. I can tell you what I do know, which is not that much. What I've heard, and I've yet to get it clarified, so please don't hold me to this. This is the little bit I heard from communities, is that there was an Asian gentleman, a Sikh gentleman, I believe. The police wanted to stop him, I believe, on the road. There was a there's an allegation that he was resisting arrest. I don't know if that's true or not. He ended up, I don't know whether he ended up in the police station or at the side of the road, but my understanding is his turban somehow was removed from the head, whether during the struggle or deliberately, I don't know. And that there's an allegation that I believe a police officer stood on it, kicked it or moved it or came in contact with his foot. I know nothing more than that. And that's all I know.
Yeah, on the West Midlands Police Facebook page, it's basically we can confirm that the man in custody was asked to remove his turban to be searched. It was removed by an officer in a private room to search for anything that could be harmful to a man or our custody officers. The heading covering fell to the floor at one point, but was immediately retrieved. At no point was it stamped on. That's what they're saying on the Facebook page. But obviously, with the protest yesterday in Peribar, it was the other way around. But you know, it's
apparently it was kicked off his head and stamped on. Yeah, that's what is going on Facebook and Instagram. And then apparently his head was stamped on or something like that as well.
But Jazz, apparently what West Midlands Police are saying, you know, the image that was being sent out, the video, that's not from that. It's probably from somewhere else. That's what they're saying. So
what
looks like
I
you're
can
gonna have
say
your hands
now,
full then, isn't it, Derek?
Well, yes. So I'm just getting some images coming through now. Give me a second as we're talking. My phone's going crazy.
Derek, I think you'll find some TikTok videos portraying a Smurf are also being released. About
what, sorry?
A
TikTok
Smurf.
videos showing a Smurf, a bluey Smurf, with the turban, etc., regarding this incident, are also in the social media.
Right, I'm rubbish at social media, so if there's a chance of you getting those to us, that'd be really helpful.
No
so problem. as we speak now, Balbir and Vipal, I'm straight after this, because the police were trying to update me on the latest on what's going on. So apart from what we've just discussed, that's as much as I know. And once I've listened to the what the police have to say, a decision will be made by me whether I will investigate or require them to investigate it without oversight, or I'm not worried for them to look at it and then feed back to the community. So I don't know what my decision is yet, because I don't know what they're going to tell me, and I indeed will see. Do we know where this information has come? Has it come from the individual themselves, or has it been videoed by an independent person? Where do we know where it's come from?
Don't know the sources yet.
But there's loads of things flying around about the protest, and like I mentioned on the West Midlands Police Facebook page,
I've got it now.
Yeah, it's on there.
So I've got the image. We're now examining CCTV surrounding our officers' interaction with the man in the custody. So it was actually in the station by the looks of it.
Yeah.
There are cameras in the station, so everything will be caught on that. I will make sure that I go and look at that. I'll assure you that I will look at that video myself. I ain't listen to them. I will look at it myself, and I'll personally ensure that I know what's happening, and I will come back and feed back to you to let you know where we are with that.
Okay, cool. Just one more quick question. You said you made 34,000 complaints you receive on an average. How many of those complaints are actually upheld, and how many are actually kind of let out and said, disregarded or just brushed under the table?
So what I can tell you is that we don't get 34,000. What we're saying is that 34,000 are made against the police, to the police. Mm-hmm. They send to us about 4,600. So we only see 4,600.
Yeah.
And then we take 500 of those independently.
Why just 500?
Because they're the most, because a lot of them is like, oh, well, he shot me finger in the door. We're not going to take up our time investigating stuff like that. Or, the police officer.
But that could be done deliberately, couldn't it, really? It could be just because
well,
they're
not
going to investigate this any further, so let's just smash his fingers in.
No. It doesn't work like it doesn't. I get your point, but we're a very small organization with a massive remit. And we only deal with, in law, we could only deal with, so we have a scheme to identify what type of cases we would look at. The vast majority isn't for us to look at. You know, if an officer swore at somebody, we're not going to get involved in that.
Mm-hmm.
However, if we believe that the behavior, even though it may be a low level incident like swearing, if we believe the impact is going to cause a massive riot and the public are going to riot, I may look at it then, because I'm now thinking, well, the issue is very small, but the impact is very big. So again, we have to use our resources wisely, where we think it's going to have the most impact, and where we don't want to be tied up with things that just bog us down with things that really we shouldn't be getting involved with. There's a low level stuff, deal with the officer, sanction them, give them a written warning, send them on their way, and the force rightly should do that.
Right, yeah, you didn't answer the question, how many are upheld?
So we upheld, we in our investigation, we're upholding in the region of about 27% of our investigations.
That's quite low, don't you reckon?
It's quite high, I think. We should be
Oh,
upholding
500, 27%.
Because don't forget, our role isn't to always find guilt, it's also to satisfy that they did the right thing. So in a number of cases where we say, for example, the police has used excessive force, say somebody's, I don't know, let's say somebody broke an arm during police interaction. Now I may look at that because there's a serious injury, and I'm saying, well, have the police behaved properly? Did they do everything they should have done? So I've investigated it. At the end of my investigation, I think, actually, yes, he was running away from the police. He tripped over and broke his arm. That's why we looked at it. But the police didn't do anything wrong. You did okay, carry on. So when you say upheld, we're talking about where we believe that the officers have behaved wrong. They need to be held accountable. And that's what I mean by upheld. So out of the 500, the vast majority is fine. Actually, community, you can be assured the police have behaved properly in this. They were justified to use that level of force. They were faced with this situation. The force they used was appropriate. We've examined it and we're satisfied. There's no case to answer, move on. So that's how we work.
And the other question that's come through by somebody called Karen is, are these complaints broken down by ethnic minorities, like how many would be from Hindus and Sikhs, etc.?
But what we do, we've now placed a duty, well, there's a duty on us through the Equality Act to record the ethnicity of the police officers that we investigate, and the police have a duty to record the ethnicity of the victim or the complainant or the person, the criminal. They keep all of that data. So what I do, I can call that data off, so I can see, well, how many complaints, how many, in my case, I can tell you how many are Asian, how many are black, how many are white, how many are Chinese, and we can use that, but we're not very good at that. One of the reasons why we're not brilliant is because the police sometimes can't get the information to give to us. So we're constantly working with them, but in a lot of the cases, we are able to capture most of that information.
So which one do you get the most complaints from, or at the moment, do you find them from which ethnicity?
White people.
They make the most complaints?
Yeah.
It's probably larger population, that's why.
And it's only because, so proportionately we get, so I'll give an example. We got 46, I'll give an example. Some cities we looked at where we had deaths following police contact. 46 were white people following police contact who died in custody or following police contact. 18 were black.
80 or 18?
18.
18 were black.
But that's a higher proportion,
yeah,
based on the percentage of black people compared to white people. But in real term numbers, you can see it's a lot smaller, but it's a higher percentage. So it's about working that through.
But do you think that there's less white people or ethnic people putting the complaints in because they've lost faith in the organisation and they don't feel confident to put the complaint in? 100%. So what are you doing to change that?
Things like this, getting out there, trying to empower people, trying to encourage people. So what I'm doing now is exactly answering your question. I'm trying to share with people what their rights are, to get confident, how to complain. If you're not worried about the police, come to us. and we're just trying to. So I'm spending my time. We're in Warwickshire tomorrow. We're all over. We're just traveling all the time, sharing the message.
Yeah, I understand, but overall, what happens is it usually gets brushed under the table. That's the image that people are getting. You have the system in place, or it's good as it's written on the paper, but behind the scenes, there's no activity. People have exhausted the systems, putting in complaints, and then get nowhere. That is the image out there.
Correct, and we get that feedback.
That's within the police force as well, with the discrimination within racism within the police force. Yes, you recruit from ethnic diversity people, but how many actually stay on, and how many are actually just leaving due to the harassment or victimization that they get within the job?
So there's a couple of things there, and you're right on every single point. Statistically, it's a fact. People's confidence aren't as high as it should be because they're disappointed with the system. What we have tried to do, and if you look at our website, we put every week, every day, I put out a press release. The media don't pick it up because they're not interested. But on our website, we are reporting on our successes, the impact we're making, the lessons that we've learned, and we're sharing with the force. So we're doing a lot of work, but we're not a main game. We're not Harry Potter. Nobody cares really, unless it affects them. A lot of people are disappointed because they don't get the outcome they want, and what they believe they should get, and they don't get that, then they get disappointed. But what we are trying to do is to say, if we do it properly, even though the outcome might not be what you expect, but have confidence that it was done properly, fairly, transparently, robustly, that's as far as we can go to help to bring confidence. Because after we've investigated something, it may be that actually, I know you think the police did something wrong, but actually they didn't. So you're going to be unhappy with that finding. But at least if you can say, well, I can see that you've done everything that you should have done, and I know you've investigated it properly and examined everything, at least that should help to bring confidence. And those are the things that we're trying to do. In regard to the police, they understand that. No point bringing people into the house, but the house doesn't change, so the people leave. They've got to not only bring people in from ethnic minority backgrounds, but they've also got to change the environment so that people can stay and they're treated properly. They get that. Part of my job is to make sure that they do that. And I absolutely stand firm to make sure that happens.
Darang, did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Derek, I try and sort of keep it as simple as possible. The first question is that to resolve some of these issues that we're having, do police officers wear a body cam? So
yes.
So that would help to sort of iron out some of the things, incidents, he said this, I said that, and whatever.
Correct.
So that's one question. The second question is that people who would wish to join the police force, whether it's ethnic minority or women have difficulty, whether it's the army or the police or other kind of forces. They're subjected to harassment, pressurized in being yes, no. What sort of protection is out there for them so they can do their job without having this other aggressive nature from men, mostly from supervisors who sort of impose on them?
I think that I mean, you're asking the $64,000 question. How do we change women's perception of men and equally men's perception of women? And that is a societal culture change. One of the things that we can do, and what we are lobbying for, and indeed the police service, I think, have really taken positive steps to do this, is to, signal very clearly that they're not going to tolerate domestic violence. They're going to start to investigate those things a lot more thoroughly and more robustly. All those things are fantastic, and we're hearing those messages. We now need to start to see the whole jigsaw work. So there's no point having effective police officers coming around feeling the collar of perpetrators of domestic violence, for example, or misogynistic behavior or poor treatment of women. The police officers do a grand job to get these people before the courts, but then the courts don't do their job properly, or the CPS don't do their job properly. So it's not just a single focus on the police or on you, it's the whole criminal justice system. And these are some of the things that, as society, as Balbir mentioned earlier perfectly correctly, as you're suggesting now, It's a collective approach. We've got to continue lobbying. We've got to work in our different areas. I work as a police watchdog. You work as a community leader, and the collective voice, and indeed making sure that women can feel safe to live their life, must not just feel safe, they must be safe.
Yeah.
And we've got to make sure that the police are responsive. When they turn up, they do take things seriously, which we're starting to see a very positive move towards that. We start to see society's attitude change. We start to call out bad behavior by men who think it's okay to denigrate women and see them as a slab of meat. Absolutely not. We have to take responsibility. Conscious people like us in society and community, we've got to be very clear and signal very clearly that this behavior is not acceptable. And that constant march of change over time, I believe, is going to get us to where you've suggested we should be.
Yeah. Thank you, Derek. Thank you.
Is that commenting there?
I'm mindful about the time as well, and I know, Derek, you've probably got some things that you need to follow through on.
Yes, I've got the police. I've got a call now, and I've got another community rep calling.
So I think we'll bring the session to a closure, and we'll let Jazz do the close down. So that we can end the session. Jazz,
okay. First of all, thank you, Derek, for your time.
You're welcome.
And all the insight and the information. Hopefully, this gets out to the community a lot more. Look forward to doing probably another session, like a topic one, and getting some more people out there.
Anytime.
Amanda, thank you for your time and continuous harassment for getting this date into the diary.
No problem. No problem at all.
Say you need to be a police officer. You're definitely adamant about when you get yourself started. So yeah, so thank you very much, and thank you everybody else who has been online. Till next time, I gotta say, take care of yourself and each other, everybody.
Blessings. Take care. Thank you very much for your time.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Derek. Thanks,
Thank
Amanda.
you. Take care.
Bye-bye. God bless.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.